This Bybit hack brings back some old memories, doesn't it?
Listen up. You didn't lose your money. Now, you have your... Technically, you kind of lost your money.
Welcome back, everyone. In this video, we're going to break down the $1.4 billion Bybit hack. How did they do it? Who came to the rescue? And the key takeaways.
I saw the transaction. I'm the last signer, so I clicked on sign.
I think one question is how many users are affected. I mean, to be honest, right now, everyone is affected.
Initially, the attack originated from this wallet address shown below, which executed an exec transaction on the Gnosis Safe multi-sig proxy contract. It looks like the vulnerability really had to do with the way that this Gnosis Safe multi-sig contract was set up and used. So essentially, it would make this contract susceptible to UI manipulation, malware infection, and unauthorized signature generation, which is actually what happened in this hack. A quick look at the attack flow would look something like this. Right? Initially, there was a social engineering attack, then there was the initial transaction, then there was the contract manipulation, and then there was the funds extraction. So here's how the attack flow worked. The attacker identified each multi-sig signer responsible for approving transactions. Then the signers interacted with a fake UI that appeared to show a legitimate transaction. Then they approved the transaction. The signers unknowingly handed over control of that cold wallet to the attacker. The attacker then executed a delegate call using stolen keys to their contract, triggering the transfer. This manipulation redirected further delegations to the attacker's contract. The attacker's contract includes sweep functions, which were executed via delegation to transfer funds. So all of this was a series of transactions that resulted in the theft of over $1.4 billion worth of crypto, specifically 400,000 ETH. An interesting take out of this is that people, and rightfully so, I guess, it seems that people are painting this as like, this time it's different, okay? And what makes this attack so significant, right? Essentially, what the FUD that is being portrayed is that multi-sigs are no longer a security guarantee. Cold wallets aren't automatically safe. Supply chains and UI manipulation attacks are becoming more sophisticated. Now, I am going to push back on this because I don't think that this is entirely accurate of what really happened, right? So multi-sigs were never a security guarantee. There's actually no such thing as a 100% guarantee. So I would actually be weary of anybody that does make you a 100% guarantee. So that right away is just it's just a flaw, right? Because of course, as we'll see later on, the weakest point quite often in any chain of security is the human factor, okay? The human is quite often what can be hacked, all right? And this is evident by the fact that there's most likely the Lazarus group, right, who claimed responsibility for this hack. Well, they socially engineered these people in the beginning. And if you ever took a look at Kevin Mitnick's work, The Art of Deception, you'd understand that social engineering gets used much more often and in many different ways than we think. So cold wallets aren't automatically safe. I gotta tell you, nobody thought that anyways. This kind of sounds like some type of shitcoiner rhetoric, right? Because Bitcoiners don't sit there and just automatically say, well, the cold wallet is, guaranteed safe. It's like, that's not how that works. Okay, you need to generate, you need to actually generate your seed words offline. And to make it safer, you may want to use dice rolls for entropy. So there's this whole idea of guaranteed safe, like that is absolute nonsense. And then the supply chain and UI manipulation attacks are becoming more sophisticated. Okay, I mean, I'll give that to them. I mean, sure, they're becoming more sophisticated. But again, I've talked about this before. If you want to mitigate a supply chain attack, when you receive let's say a signing device, one of the best things that you can do is manually reinstall the firmware yourself. So blank the device and reinstall the firmware yourself. So download it yourself, do the PGP key check yourself, and then once you are sufficiently confident that you've got a secured piece of software and a secured hardware device, well, then you can flash the firmware on it. Anyways, I really appreciate Nunchuck's take on the Bybit hack. And for the people who don't know who Nunchuck is, it's just like probably the best Bitcoin mobile wallet that you can get. I mean, this thing has all the bells and whistles. The team behind Nunchuck is just absolutely destroying it. Anyways, all right, let's dive into their take. So this is what they had to say. The Bybit hack essentially boils down to three things: users failing to verify all transaction contract details, users relying on a browser-based wallet that's easy to spoof, Ethereum contracts being fundamentally complex and mutable. It's very difficult for people to take personal responsibility for things. And again, I'm not saying that the victims in this case are, like it's like victim shaming, because it is way more complex than that. I believe that this was a long social attack, right? Meaning that essentially the Lazarus group had in my eyes, spent a lot of time socially engineering this information, because keep in mind, right, they needed all of this to work in a sequence, right? Which means the software, right, how the software that they used to modify the UI for each of the signers, that already had to be in place. So if anybody is thinking that this is some type of like fly-by-night hack, seriously mistaken. I mean, this was coordinated, this was planned, and if you ask me, this was a long game. Now, one of the most important pieces, I think, to this story is essentially how Bybit is getting out of this problem. It seems that Binance and BitGet deposited over 50K of ETH directly into Bybit's cold wallet. It looks, for the moment, as though BitGet and Binance have made an agreement to shore up and help Bybit. Now, something that's a little bit curious here that you may wonder is that, so last cycle when FTX, right before FTX completely blew up, or no, actually it had already blown up, CZ had offered, at the time he was the CEO of Binance, CZ had offered to help FTX out, but then started digging through their books, and well, I'm assuming he dug through their books or somehow got wind of some information that like this thing was completely falling apart, and then he backed out at the last second. Now, interestingly enough, in this particular case, CZ did not back out. I don't know what that means, but maybe that's kind of a validation that, this is a legitimate hack that's possibly not an inside job, right? Because that is something that people are starting to insinuate, is that something this sophisticated, this complex, may have been an inside job. Okay, so here are my main takeaways from this whole story. First of all, rolling back the chain is not a solution. It may have worked in the DAO hack, which was totally different than this, but in this case, okay, in this particular case, right, what has already happened is that these attackers have taken their funds, right? They moved they moved over 400,000 ETH, okay, and they took those funds and they've already moved them over. They've already swapped them over to Solana, and in some cases already swapped into Bitcoin. So what does that mean? So if somehow the ETH Foundation and Vitalik and whoever else were to decide to roll back the Ethereum chain to before the attack, well, guess what? All of that Bitcoin that they swapped into and sold, that all still exists. They have all of that. So they would effectively have done absolutely nothing, but really just kind of punish Ethereum holders. So that's not really a viable option. Now, it's interesting because I do see Bitcoiners cheering for this to go and roll back the chain, but it's not because they're trying to help, right? Like, we're not like sitting there saying roll back the chain because it's the right thing to do. We're making fun of this, right? This is tongue in cheek. Like, we're saying to roll back the chain because it proves it's just another nail in the coffin of immutability. Okay, the other piece to this, right? I've seen some people think that this is kind of the the first horseman of the apocalypse for the next bear market. I don't know that I can disagree with that, because it does make me think back to FTX. It does make me think back to Do Kwon and Luna and how he's talking about, steady lads deploying capital, right? And in the beginning, everything seems like it's fine, right? And also the infamous words of being solvent, right? Every time you see one of these exchange CEOs talk about being solvent and withdrawals are working fine, that usually doesn't work out too well within a couple of days, or in some cases within a couple of weeks. So do I think that this particular hack ends up leading to part of this cycle's major sell-off when the bull market is done? Quite possibly. I can't discount that. I definitely can't, because when we look back at last cycle, right, we had FTX, we had Luna, we had Celsius, we had Three Arrows Cap, we had Signature Bank, we had Silicon Valley Bank. I mean, this was like the dominoes that had to fall, right? And they didn't all fall together at the same time. So is it possible that this hack ends up somehow biting us again in about 12 months? Maybe. Maybe it does. And lastly, I saw some people, even though I know I said 2 takeaways, but I also started to think about the fact that some people said this signals, I saw some people saying that this is signaling the beginning of the bear market. I am actually going to suggest that this signals absolutely nothing of that sort. I don't think that this is the beginning of the Bitcoin bear market or anything like that. I do believe, however, that it is definitely, we're not at the beginning anymore. We're definitely, in my eyes, we're not at the beginning. We're probably closer to the middle of the bull run, but I don't think, I don't really think that it's over. I think we still got a lot of fireworks that we need to see. I know I said only 2 takeaways, but my third takeaway: get your Bitcoin off the exchanges. It is that simple. Okay? We've been seeing exchanges get hacked since the beginning of this entire space. Okay? This is nothing new. And if you think that the exchange you're using is not susceptible to this, then you're doing yourself a big disservice, number one. Number two, you're being naive. And number three, you're only going to figure out that you're possibly mistaken when it's too late. And from what I've seen in the majority of cases, they never give you back your Bitcoin. They simply give you back a nominal value based on a date that exchange and their management chooses. That's all I wanted to talk about today, guys. Catch you on the next one.